Hey everyone, I have played the Dusk Bloods, and I have to say, it's really good. I have participated in every single network test so far. Well, at least the ones that, they let us participate in. And there's still one happening tonight, but I think I have formed a well-rounded opinion of this game, as well as actually found some strategies and some tips that have worked really well for me in the network tests, and I want to talk about those too. I'm going to talk about an overview of the game, what it is asking from you as a player, some of my first impressions, and then at the end of the video, I will talk about some tips that worked for me in the first few rounds of Duskbloods. I can't really provide any great tips when it comes to the PvP aspect of this game, because I am not great at the PvP, but otherwise, I feel like I've wrapped my head around this game pretty well. I'm also using footage for this, not from my own recordings. I'm going to be using screenshots and footage that has already been made publicly available by FromSoft, so I am trying to play by the rules the best as I can here. I know there's some people who are just straight up streaming the game, which hey, teach their own, but I'm going to try and play by the rules so Nintendo doesn't, nuke me from orbit. Okay, so an overview of this game. It has been advertised as a PvPvE multiplayer game. I think that, like many other people who have done coverage on this, sells the game short. Yeah, there's PvP, yeah, there's PvE, there's some, almost tabletop aspects to it, there's some role-playing involved. There is roguelike aspects. You're not picking from 3 things, you're picking from 2 most of the time. What everything adds up to create is something that I can only describe as uniquely FromSoft. I was a big fan of Night Rain, obviously trying something different, but it still felt relatively safe in a sense, because it was a familiar IP, and they were bringing in other familiar IPs that they have in their repertoire, like Dark Souls and Demon Souls. Duskbloods is, in my opinion, way more ambitious than that. At the same time, I think it can also be very polarizing. If you are expecting a game similar to Night Rain, you'll get some aspects of it, but ultimately I think it's asking a lot more of the player. Instead of just beating bosses, you are being asked to explore, being asked to loot, being asked to kind of do little side quests. You can just fight a bunch of enemies and maybe be successful, but I think in order to really be successful in this game, you need to kind of diversify your playstyle. In terms of other FromSoft games that feel similar to, the vibe and a few of the mechanics is just ripped straight from Bloodborne. There's also some enemies that I saw in this network test that straight up have movesets just stolen from Bloodborne. There's one enemy that I fought a few times called Beast Ridden. It's just the Father Gascoigne moveset. Straight up. One enemy called Vampire, just spelled with a Y, had just pretty much an Orphan of Chaos design. This game really loves Bloodborne. Maybe this was supposed to be like a Bloodborne 2, but obviously they can't get the rights to that because Sony owns it. But it is, in its heart of hearts, this is Bloodborne. But it also has the mobility and the speed of something like a Sekiro, and also the time constraint and the quick thinking of something like Night Rain. One thing I was actually surprised to see in the network test is there are cutscenes, there are characters interacting with each other. The impression that I get is that it's going to be way more in-depth. The direction in Duskbloods, even in the network test, is already way stronger than in Night Rain. This feels like a core FromSoft experience. Kind of feels like they really put their whole effort into not just the gameplay and the systems, but also the presentation. So what is Duskbloods actually asking you to do? Well, in a match, you have 4 different phases, and over the first 3 phases, you are asked to collect something called Virtue, and you are essentially going to be pitted against one another based on how many virtue points that you have. In the first phase, everyone survives, but the second and third phase, if you do not have a certain amount of points, like if you're at the bottom of the leaderboard when it comes to virtue points, you are going to be culled, as they say, and you are just done in the match. Everybody keeps going, but you're out. At the end of all the phases, you have something called Moonblood Bestowal. This is essentially just a free-for-all between the top 3 characters from the match, and you have 2 lives, and you just need to kill each other. Whoever survives wins the match. You get a fun little cutscene where your character gets a drop of blood for the moon, sips it. It's very Bloodborne-y. I'm not sure if there's going to be a moon presence involved, but yeah. Huge Bloodborne vibes throughout. The thing is with Virtue, you can get it in a bunch of different ways, and the amount that you can gain increases as the phases progress. There are 6 types of virtue in the game. There is sword virtue, so you earn that by defeating players at a ritual site, and those ritual sites are only available at the end of phases 2 and 3. So if you are killing enemies prior to that, you are not getting anything. You are just killing people for no benefit to you. I had only a few people try and do that in a match, maybe because they had certain things like sigils, which are like the quests that you get to be either interact with certain people, you can kill them, make alliances, things like that. But otherwise, sword virtue is not gained other than at the end of phases 2 and 3. There's something called pledge virtue, which the areas where you are going to end up fighting people at these ritual sites, you can hold down Y and you pledge your virtue to the specific ritual site. So that's like you have claimed this area of the map. Other people can come in and try and claim it back, and then they can take that virtue away from you. There's a huge struggle for those areas. Sometimes I was the only person at a ritual site. Sometimes there was like upwards of 5 players at a ritual site. It gets a little crazy. Honestly, other than the end phase, that is the most I experienced the PvP, and you can avoid that almost entirely if you want to. I don't always recommend it. There's repulsion virtue, so you earn that by defeating foes. There's mini bosses throughout the map. There are proper bosses throughout the map. You get different levels of repulsion virtue based on who you beat and what phase you beat them in as well. Minor bosses will just pop up on the map and they're not marked. You have to go find exactly where they are. They're usually in designated places, but it's not always the same boss in each place. Some of them are just roaming the map and you just have to find them. Like I said, there was that enemy called the Beast Ridden, where I would just find them hanging out. Sometimes there would be 2 right next to each other, and then I'd be able to beat both of them and get a lot of virtue at once. The bigger foes, though, the ones that are actually marked on the map as trespassers, you can fight those with other people. You can engage them, and then other people can come fight and join you. And at that point, you aren't fighting each other. No one does any damage to each other. You're only fighting the boss. There's also flame virtue, and this is something that I think is severely underrated and more people should think about, is this virtue where I would essentially call flame virtue exploration virtue, because there are different points on the map. There is just someone sitting in a chair, they're glowing purple, and you go up to them, you hit Y, and then you collect your flame virtue, and no one can take that from you. On the map, there are little markers that say what areas might have flame virtue, and so you can actually gear yourself to go towards those areas and try and collect as much of the flame virtue before anybody else gets to it. It's a great way to not necessarily engage in combat with other players at ritual sites, but still earn a good amount of virtue in a phase. There's also other virtue. You can just randomly come across virtue on the ground. Sometimes it's just available as a piece of loot, but you don't always know that it's going to be there. It's usually like 1 or 2 at a time. You can also get it sometimes from upgrades. It's pretty rare from what I found. I only got it maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the entire network test, but you can opt to maybe get more damage, or you can get 2 virtue. The last bit of virtue that I wanted to talk about, and this is probably the most important one, and I'd say the one I either focused on or exploited the most, was commendation virtue. So there are 2 types of commendation virtue. One is called Bloodfang and the other is called Collector. These are essentially 2 mini leaderboards within the lobby that track, 1 for Bloodfang, who has defeated the most enemies, and 2 for Collector, who has collected the most loot. There is a little counter in the bottom right corner that gives you your score for Bloodfang and for Collector, and pretty much if you beat one enemy, your score goes up by 1. The other is Collector. I'm not fully sure how this gets calculated, but I think it has to do on rarity. Obviously, just you're going to be collecting a lot of things, but if you have more rare things, I believe that contributes more to your Collector score. All of these things add up together to form your final virtue score, and that determines if you move on to the final phase. And the final phase, I will say, is honestly, if FromSoft made Super Smash Bros., this is what it would be like. Yeah, you just go at it. 3 people just in a room going at it. There was definitely some character meta already being established in this network test. I'd say the majority of people were using the character that I use, which is Sniper Layla, who just has really, really good ranged abilities. After that, it was probably Zork. Everybody was Zorking it. and then Bloodhound Jan, which is the guy in his PJs. In the game, you level up simply by fighting. It's not like a Night Rain where you need to go to a Grace and actually manual level up. It's just whatever experience you get will contribute to that level up, and it just automatically happens in the background. Each of the characters in the network test both had 2 abilities. One ability you just have as a base to start, but then as you level up, you unlock the other ability, which more often than not is way stronger than your initial ability. There might be 1 or 2 that I say were like maybe a little overpowered. They might get tuned down. But otherwise, I saw a bunch of people being able to use a bunch of the different characters very effectively. Beyond characters, there's also kin, which are essentially summons that follow you around throughout the match. I'm pretty sure in the base release, you will be able to choose which kin you get, but for this one, it was, for lack of a better term, it was pretty random for me. I would just go up, see which one I got, and then just work with that. Ultimately, I think this might be hard for people to get in the door. You might hear what this game is and think it's overly complex or there's too much going on, but I think that works to its strength. If you are just like a PvP person, there is much more here than just PvP. I personally love how it's set up because it lets you engage with the game how you want to. I am not a huge PvP person, but every single match, I was able to get into the top 3 pretty much through exploring, beating bosses, focusing on commendation, and it was a working formula for me. And I'm sure someone else has a completely different way of going about it, and it was successful for them. It's player expression in a way I didn't necessarily expect in a FromSoft game. A lot of other FromSoft games, player expression comes from your build, from like the different strats and buffs that you apply. Here, player expression is how you navigate the actual match itself. And I think that's pretty sweet. And now that we've gone for an overview and I've just yapped about like what is actually happening in this game, I'm going to talk about some tips that I found that were successful for me in at least phases 1 through 3 in Duskbloods. My first tip, honestly, the second that you start a match, get a kin, because you will be able to upgrade that alongside you during the entire match. And once you have that, you have something to either draw aggro a little bit, it can do some extra damage, it can buff you. It's just a free thing that will help you throughout the entire match. So do not overlook getting a kin as quickly as you can. My second tip would be, do not just go and run at bosses. Honestly, I don't think the return in terms of virtue is super worth it, especially early on in these matches. One thing I would recommend trying to get up as soon as possible is the commendation virtues. That's the Bloodfang and the Collector. Well, I'm gonna call that passive virtue because it's not necessarily something that you go and you just grab and claim and then you get a big number coming up. These are things that add up over time, and if you can be consistent with them in a match, it will really benefit you and it'll skyrocket you to the top of the leaderboard. Also, when it comes to the Bloodfang commendation, when you're going through when you're defeating a bunch of enemies, that raises your level too. So it's not like it's just going towards the commendation. You are getting more experience, getting higher levels, you can do more damage as a result. For example, with the Bloodfang commendation, I found areas. There was this one area, it was in a cave. In a cave on the map that I would always try and go to right at the start of the match, because there is a bunch of enemies in there, and not only is there a bunch of enemies, there's a bunch of loot. So I could get my Bloodfang commendation by killing pretty much everything in the cave, as well as collecting a bunch of stuff. Like, obviously the Collector commendation goes up, but at the same time, I'm getting a lot of good items that I could potentially use in combat going forward. I would honestly, especially in the early game, recommend trying to track down Flame Virtue as much as you can. The cave that I would go into usually had either like 1 or 2 spots that I could claim some Flame Virtue. That would be anywhere from like 2 to 6 in the first few phases, going all the way up to 9 in the last phase. I would honestly pay attention to the initial map for each phase, because there are little icons. I'll put the flame icon up on the screen right now. But there are little icons throughout the map that designate where you are more likely to get certain benefits. When it comes to actually, fighting other players, you are going to have to engage with the pledging and the ritual sites at least a little bit. With a little over 2 minutes left in phases 2 and 3, the ritual sites get established and then people just go for them. You can get virtue from pledging there. You can also get virtue from killing people within the vicinity of the ritual site. So I would honestly recommend trying to go for if you're gonna go for them immediately, get pledged early, and then just try and defend that site. It's pretty straightforward, not like obviously the most big brain tip ever, but it's a good way to ensure that you can get some virtue towards the end of a phase, say if you've been striking out early on. And the last bit of advice that I have is use the fast travel in Duskbloods. There are points on the map, I'll put the icon somewhere on the screen here, where you can just instantly fast travel. Open up the map, and then you can go from one side of the map to the other instantly. It doesn't interrupt anybody else's game. It honestly cut down my travel time and a lot of my confusion looking for things sometimes, like you wouldn't believe. I would be exploring in the cave, get everything that I wanted, and then I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna go try and fight one of the trespassers now, because I'm a pretty high level and I think I could probably take it out pretty quickly. And so I would just immediately fast travel right next to it, put a marker on my map, run up to it, and then go. Same thing with the ritual sites. Once the ritual sites get activated, I would open up my map, find the closest fast travel point, go to that, put a marker on the ritual site, and then immediately go there. And I was usually the first, if not the second person there. So I got there before the site got really hectic. With these tips, at worst, I would get maybe around like 75 to 80 virtue, but still be able to go on to the final fight. The high ends of that were around like 110 and 120 virtue. I was consistently getting into the final round with these strategies. I think the only time I didn't end up getting to the final round was when I was trying a different character and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I got bounced like after the second phase because I had no virtue. That last phase can honestly be a little bit of a crapshoot, but it's a lot of fun. It really gets the adrenaline pumping, and honestly, I was having a really fun time with it. I normally am not a PvP guy, but with the resources that I've been given, and once I started wrapping my head around exactly what my character could do and playing to my strengths, I was having a much better time. The network test that I had this morning, I probably got, I think, 4 or 5 victories out of that, whereas the first couple of days, I think I got maybe 1. All this to say is that I'm really enjoying the game. Can't wait to see when it's actually going to be released, which tweaks they end up making, what is the story going to be like. I think there's going to be, I'm hoping there is a pretty heavy story element to this, because it feels like there's something there for it. And ultimately, the thing that I just want the most is for them to support this pretty long term. I loved Night Rain a lot, and I was pretty disappointed to kind of see the support for that, at least from the developer, kind of fall off a cliff a little bit. The community is the one kind of keeping that alive, and that won't necessarily be the case with something like Duskbloods because it's exclusive to Switch. You can't really mod that. Anyways, did you play any of the network tests? What did you think? What were your favorite characters? Were you Zorking it? Yeah, let me know what you think. If you have any other tips as well that you found that worked really well for you, definitely put them down in the comments. I would love to discuss this a little bit more, and hopefully there's more things to cover as we get closer to the release, whenever that is. Maybe there'll be a trailer soon that we can react to. I'm excited to see where the Duskbloods goes next, but at this point, all we can do is just wait and see. If you like this video, definitely leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more. Yeah, take it easy. Bye now.